coming down the track? Who's that coming down the track? It's a mean machine in red and black. Mean machine in red and black. Ain't nothing finer in the land. Ain't nothing finer in the land. Than a drunk, obnoxious Georgia band. Than a drunk, obnoxious Georgia band. Go, go! Go, go!
What's up, y'all? This is John, Mike, and Kaleb back for another episode of the Nothing Finer podcast. As always on Sundays, we're live on Millions, and you can always find us as part of the Fans First Sports Network. Tonight, we are going to spend a vast majority of this episode on that Texas-sized ass whooping, the Austin assault, call it a cattle mutilation, the Lone Star looting, the hook 'em hold up, the horns down for what? We're talking 30-15. Dawgs take down number one Texas in Austin.
Boys, get your horns down, all the way down.
I can't go any lower.
Formerly number one Texas Longhorns. So I just saw this before we got on here. Do you know the last time Texas beat a top 5 team at home?
It was like 99, wasn't it? Or something like 99. That. Yeah.
99. Not this millennium. And
right.
We were worried about these boys.
Almost as long ago as Tennessee's national championship.
That's a lot.
Yeah.
Doesn't feel like 98 or 99, so hell yeah.
No, it does not. But before we get into all that, guys, how you been? What are you drinking? It's been a crazy weekend.
I think we're both trying to let the other go, so I will go. Pretty good. As you can see, my voice is hurting a little bit, and I didn't even go to Austin. I was watching it at home, as I think y'all were too. But, it's hard not to be in a good mood right now. Church this morning was as full as I've seen it since January 1st of 2023. So it was good to see. Right now, my wife and I are on a gut health kick, so I'm drinking some kombucha. And once I get through that, then I've got a plastic bottle of water. And when I finished my plastic bottle of water, I'm going to gently place it in the trash can or recycling bin like an adult.
Mike?
Hey, who does that? Anyway. That's a winning move. Anyway. I'm good. A good weekend. For the most part, busy. My Friday, we had a staff versus student volleyball game at school, and I've mentioned on here a million times, but my wife and I work at the same school. She's my boss at school and at home, and we were both out there playing. And she lettered in high school. She was a really good volleyball player, even though she's very, very short. But anyway, she tried to dig a ball out, and she dug too deep, and she tore the larger muscle in her calf. So we're going to meet with an orthopedic surgeon tomorrow, hopefully, for that. So
that's big yikes.
Yeah.
Well, what was funny was I picked her up and put her on the bleachers, and and it's like, oh, it feels like a Charlie horse, but I heard it pop. I'm like, it's probably not that. Then we go.
Typically, when you hear I picked her up and put her on the bleachers, it's a much more fun story than that.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, I'm not gonna tell you what happened after that, but there's a whole car ride to the ER that we can talk about, or not. But
just make sure you put the brakes on the wheelchair before you get started.
Never been with somebody in a wheelchair before. Check one off. Anyway, but yeah, there's that. But yeah, dude, it was a good weekend. I'm just drinking some water. You guys saw some of my messages during the game, so I'm gonna drink. I'm not gonna drink anymore until next week. I'll try to reenact some of it later on if I'll go back and look at it. But how about you?
Good, dude. Went to the Southern game yesterday. They won the game. Got up 21-0 in the first half, and then tried to throw that lead away, but they won regardless.
That sounds familiar.
Yeah. I tailgated with Kelsey's boss. Me and her tailgated with her boss. And it was with all of his fraternity brothers from Georgia Southern. So, it's never a bad day when you get to sit in a circle of trucks that cost almost as much as my house. And and shotgun some Yingling flights. When you're shotgunning the expensive beer, you're with the right crowd.
Oh yeah,
Oh,
absolutely.
yeah.
But I sat next to Warren Brinson's uncle at the Southern game. I I'm assuming he's a veteran just based on a little bit of the conversation we had, and got the ticks through vet ticks like I did. Um, but I saw him wearing the Georgia ring, and I dapped him up. I was like, "Go Dogs," and we got to talking, and then I accidentally pissed off an officer sitting in front of us.
Oh no.
So Georgia Southern was honoring some of their ROTC staff, and I told Kelsey, I was like, "Man, I would go for free to try to teach these kids." And she said, "Why?" And I said, "Well, being in the Georgia National Guard, about 50% of the officers went to Georgia Southern, and 90% of that 50% were trash."
Oh.
And this guy who I did not know was an officer beforehand turned around and gave me this death stare. And it's like, dude, if you're an officer, you know I'm right.
Yeah, get good.
Yeah.
Why are you booing me? I'm right.
Yeah, it was one of those.
Yeah.
And then, a cop tried to stop me on the way out because I had an empty beer can in my hand because they have like Hale Southern specific, like special beer cans. And he was like, "Hey man, you can't take that out." And it was a positive interaction. I turned the can upside down over the grass, and I was like, "Man, it's my first game here. I just want to take the can home." He was like, "Oh shit, you're good. Never mind."
Okay, well
There
that's
we
good.
go. There we go.
But I'm drinking a Coors. Mainly I wanted a caffeine-free Diet Coke, but I didn't have any cold, so I'm drinking
Just go
another
for a
type
beer.
of soft drink.
I mean, it's a soft drink in Russia, but are the mountains blue?
I don't know. I've got it. One of our nothing finer koozies. They are blue.
Hell yeah.
Ah,
The
good
mountains are
deal.
blue. Yeah.
All right. So Caleb requested that I put the happiness montage in the video here. I could not get it to work. Apparently, I need to update the software we use, which
All good.
they.
To be honest, based on some of the comments I've got, you might get some angry commenters over a certain person who appears in the montage anyway. But if that's
You're a
you,
meme
then
page. If they get upset over that, they're
yeah,
following the wrong person.
it is just a meme. If you can't see a person you disagree with without getting upset, you get some help.
Yeah. Um. So I'm sure if you made it this far, you know by now we're calling this episode "The Exorcism in Austin." Because these Bulldogs got some demons out, the defensive woes in the secondary, the offensive line play, the lack of effort we've seen at times this season. Those demons all got worked out on Sunday or
No
Saturday,
doubt.
and maybe they're hanging out in Austin.
Maybe seems that way. Before we really dive in, I do want to say I will not be engaging in any criticism of any aspect of the way this team played last night. I know you guys probably will, and that's fine. Go ahead. For me, despite all the flaws, we went out there and we beat the number one team in the country by double digits at their own place.
For the first time, too. First time being being the number one team in the country on the road for Georgia. So
yeah, that's
Not the
huge.
first time doing it away from home, but the first time doing it on the road.
Yeah, very important
that's
distinction.
what I mean. Yeah.
Yeah,
And
09 Florida in
yeah,
Jacksonville.
that was a good one. My other takeaway. Wait, 09.
Was it?
There was 1 year. Well, I don't think it was 09, but it was 1 year.
I saw a stat somewhere. I might be wrong.
Yeah, that's okay. Other takeaway is that Georgia owns overrated teams from the state of Texas. So shout out TCU.
Yeah. What is Max Duggan doing right now? Probably the same thing Quinn Ewers is going to do in like 5 years, right?
Yeah, probably.
We'll say one thing I was right about before we really get into the game. Kind of going into what I just said just a second ago. I was right about one thing. Nobody should be scared of Quinn Ewers. He can't throw off platform if you get him on the run. His accuracy, if you were like looking at it in the video game, would go from like a 95, like standing in the pocket, to like a fucking 40. So like, maybe it's part of that oblique injury. Maybe still recovering from that, but he didn't strike fear in me at all. It was more our quarterback, but we'll get into that.
Yeah.
I definitely got some fear from our quarterback.
Yeah.
So just to set the stage a little bit, pregame line, it jumped from Texas by 2.5 all the way up to Texas by 5.5, and then the day of the game it dropped down to 4.5. Over under was 56, so the under hit.
Did Georgia cover? That's the big question.
Yeah.
Did they?
I need to start this breakdown with a formal apology. If I'm going to harp on a guy for playing poorly, I have to praise him for playing phenomenally. And to Dalen Everett, I am sorry for doubting you. I'm not necessarily going to backtrack on some of the criticism that I've had over the last 2 seasons for the way you've played at times. And I'm sure you wouldn't want me to, because judging by the way that you've corrected the way you played and, the way leaders have talked on the team, it hasn't been quite good enough at times. But you went above and beyond the standard at the University of Georgia. You were absolutely instrumental in the team's overall performance last night. You were a huge, if not the biggest, difference maker on the defense last night from the first kickoff to the end of the game. So, formally, I'm sorry.
Yeah, me too. I will add to that, though. Now the responsibility is there. Now that we've seen it, do it again. That's the expectation. Keep it up. But yeah, I agree. I think every person who wears a G on their chest at some point in their life has had something to say about Dalen Everett. The man delivered big time. We'll talk about him more later, though.
Yeah,
for sure. I will say expecting him to keep that level is probably a little much.
Right.
But somewhere between what we saw against Auburn and Mississippi State and yesterday, and hopefully more towards the yesterday.
Yeah.
Georgia's offense started this game pretty disastrously. Carson threw a bad pick about 5 minutes into the game, and I know myself, everyone at my house, I think my dogs even were concerned this was going to end up like the Bama game. And the defense held up, and everybody's like, all right, didn't pay for that one. And then he threw another one, once again, at the goal line. And in that small part of our hearts that died during the big games under Mark Richt, we felt like it was going to start to grow. It was like the blackness was spreading from the pits of our heart. And then Dalen fucking Everett, in a positive way.
Yeah, the first time in the history of this podcast.
Correct. Silence the crowd and the doubters, me specifically, with a sack fumble in which all 22 players on the field seemed to touch the ball, and Dalen himself recovered it. Just beautiful.
It was strikingly similar to that play. I want to say it was 20.
Javon Bullard taking over the Tennessee game. Yeah.
Well, was it Bullard that did the hit? Like, I'm thinking of, like in Neyland where
Oh no, that was Eric Stokes in 20.
Yeah,
that's what I thought. I thought it was Stokes.
Was that 21 or 202019?
19.
One of those years.
Yeah, it was 19 because 21 they shut him out, right? It was like 42. No, that was 17.
No, it was 41-17. There's so many dominant performances in Neyland. It's hard to keep track. We pretty much own that stadium.
Yeah, like the only difference was Ewers got up. I mean, Ewers got hit blindside and was able to stand up. The kid that Stokes hit collapsed on the sideline and died. So much different.
Yeah.
For that. But I mean, it was strikingly similar. And but although the Everett one was a lot bigger,
way, if
it wasn't a blowout at that point.
If you're a new Georgia fan that's just showing up here and just kind of started tuning in, he doesn't mean that literally. If you were worried.
Oh no, I mean he not quite, but I mean
if you
go back, I looked back at the video like right before we got on, and I mean he got to the sideline and he just like fell over and like they were like holding him up by one arm and it was bad for him. I mean
he didn't die, but he didn't play the rest of that game.
Yeah,
he's dead to me.
Everyone who goes to Tennessee is dead to me though.
Yeah,
so.
I will say in specifically this sack fumble by Dalen Everett. When they showed the replay and you see Quinn Ewers turn his head a little and his eyes get wide is one of my favorite videos.
I got to make that a GIF somehow.
Yeah. It should be, we're brainstorming live here, guys. It should be cover up Dalen Everett with the real teams on your schedule.
Yes.
But shout out to Quinn though. He didn't turn into DJU after that. Like he took a while to get going. He got benched, and again, we'll get into that. But he wasn't completely useless after that, like BJU has been the last 3 years.
Yeah, that's fair. I will say Arch helped him out by taking a few of the sacks instead of Quinn getting all 7. But yeah, no, that single play sparked the entire Georgia team. The offense let us down twice, but one monumental play led to a touchdown 4 plays later with ETN taking it off the edge, going in there. And we're going to get to the offensive line. So I know we're kind of glossing over it here with how good that play was, but we are going to get to it.
We know. We know.
Yeah.
Then some stalled-ish drives from both teams and field goal by Peyton Woodring later. And Dalen steps up again.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to talk probably way too long about this one specific play.
It's worth it. Go ahead.
So this play in particular was an elite level of football IQ from Dalen. If you watch the replay back, and I know Kurt kind of talked about it, but with how much he hates Georgia, he didn't really talk about it quite enough. So Dalen Everett squared up on the wide receiver, shoulders square, hip square, crouch down, and he backpedals straight for 3 steps before he gives away the leverage he's playing with. There's 2 things that are important about that. Texas runs a lot of option routes, which means the wide receiver plays off of the leverage of the defensive back. You make him take 3 steps before he makes a decision, that slows the entire play down. But at the same time, Quinn Ewers did not have the opportunity to read that coverage for 3 extra steps. And with the amount of pressure the defense was getting on him in that first half, that was even bigger, because by the time that he could have read that, he'd abandoned that route completely, right? So Dalen reads the quarterback's eyes. And you know this because Quinn Ewers telegraphed the throw the entire time.
Mm-hmm.
On their wide receiver, their slot receiver, the running back, I don't remember who it was, that was matched up on a linebacker. So Dalen leaves his guy streaking down the field, knowing that with what he just did on the line of scrimmage, that route is completely out of Quinn Ewers' mind, unless he goes to scramble, and by that time, your safety is coming in from the center of the field to cover that guy. So Dalen gets off of his receiver and runs up and jumps that route for the interception. Mm-hmm. And that was truly elite awareness, football IQ from Dalen Everett there. I would love to see this past week.
Yeah, I thought, because, like you said, this wasn't just a case of Dalen being in the right place at the right time and reacting to where the ball was going. Like, he read this play from the jump.
Yeah.
And, you don't do that unless you've got the mind of an elite player, which is hence the apology earlier, because we can all see it now.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. No, there were 3 steps to him making that play. All 3 of them confused the offense and took a route completely off the page. And that, for all the shit, for lack of a better term, that we've given the defensive backs coach, Glenn Schumann at times, T-Rob at times, for the way the secondary is played, if they come close to that level the rest of the season,
it's
y'all
over.
better watch out.
Yeah.
I do gotta say one thing before we go on. This isn't in here, but I saw this morning on Twitter, Schumann posted that his wife had, I don't know if it's their second or third child.
Third.
Yeah, had her, I think, Wednesday. So maybe that's why he was preoccupied with the baby, and all the stuff that goes with that. Now the baby's out, just concentrate on football. Who cares after the baby's born?
Hey, well, great timing for that baby. Then that baby must have wanted these dogs to win if that's what's going on.
Yeah. I mean, Skyla had an insane record going for like 11 months. So
she's like, she only has 2 losses right now, both to Bama. So.
Yeah. But yeah, so once again,
my daughter's only got 3, and they're all to Bama.
Fair.
So once again, Dalen making a gigantic play resulted in the Dogs getting a short field, and with ETN getting his second touchdown of the night. Throwing it back a little bit to the interview we did with Sean from Horn Takes on Wednesday, we had asked about Arch potentially playing in this game, and Sean didn't seem concerned about a quarterback controversy. He wasn't concerned. And as of right now, no one should be.
Yeah.
I will say Arch on his 1-1 run was responsible for tripling the amount of yards that Texas had in the first half. But he also did not play well. Quinn Ewers just gets his ass beat for the first quarter and a half. Arch comes in, also has a difficult time moving the ball outside of that one play, gets beat up. I believe he also had an interception. I'd have to go back and look.
I don't think he did.
No. Okay. I'm crazy. It's fine.
They did turn it over on downs quite a bit. I think they were 105 on fourth down or
something like that. Yeah, they were being aggressive the whole game.
Yeah.
Which again just speaks to how well this defense was playing, that they were playing that aggressive and we didn't give up too much on the back end or didn't let them get too much on those fourth downs. But I'll let you get back to it because I know you've got a question here coming up.
Yes. So do you think Quinn Ewers got a little dinged up and they did the swap from his health issues because he did miss a few games? Or do you think it was a turnover?
I was wondering. Yeah. I was wondering during the game, and I think we brought this up during the Instagram Live that we did, if this was just the old Saban switcheroo he was trying out to get another quarterback on the field to see what he could do. If that is the case, Kirby Smart has obviously learned from his mistakes in that regard, because Arch, other than that one run, didn't seem to get any more done than Quinn Ewers could. But also, they're very similar quarterbacks. So that may just be the game plan. Didn't need to change a whole lot if he went in there. But it could be any number of things since we weren't there. But it did. The timing seemed suspect. I think it was after another 3 and out from Texas, and that's why my thought was, well, maybe they're just trying to get something else going.
What I know, Sark said, I think it was at halftime or after the game, he was just trying to get Quinn settled down, which I guess it worked because he played pretty well in the third quarter. But
he also said in the post-game press conference it was to try to add a spark to the offense.
Yeah. Oh, okay, so I missed that part. Okay,
his story is not straight.
Yeah, I will say though that Quinn responded to it, I guess, but I don't know what message there's been talk about, this is Quinn's team. Everyone believes in Quinn. Quinn is the leader. To send him out because he's not, playing well against Georgia and things aren't getting going. I get you want to try to get a spark in the offense, but at what cost at this point? What is this team's leadership going to think now? What are the people who are looking up to Quinn going to think the rest of the year if they think you're just going to sub their leader out in the middle of a game if it's not completely up to par? But that's just something we're going to have to see where that goes. Chances are, since he put Quinn back in pretty quick and he played the rest of the second half, we may not see that kind of a swap again. But interesting thing to keep an eye on.
Yeah, who's the real tribal chief in Austin?
All right, so y'all ready to get into the second half? We got a lot of
controversy.
Yeah.
What are you guys talking about? I missed that.
Oh, okay. Yeah, well, you'll probably still be confused by the end of this because I think pretty much everybody is. So Texas gets the ball to start the third quarter, and the controversy starts at the end of that drive. Pass interference was called on KJ Bolden in the end zone. And here's kind of my opinion on that. If that was pass interference, so was Carson's interception in the third quarter. KJ
it's
played
the same
that.
play.
Not only was it a very similar play, KJ was not grabbing onto the guy. KJ did not have his arm locked up. They were hand fighting, and then KJ went and punched the ball before it even got to the guy. If that's pass interference, then we shouldn't even put defenses on the field.
At that point.
Yeah. It was awful. It was.
Just put one guy in the back end and have him try to catch the ball if it comes kind of near him without touching anybody. That's what football is now.
Yeah. Yeah, that was a terrible call, and it was just the start of a long line of terrible calls towards the end of this game. We may get into what the SEC has said about some of the insanity that's happened last night. But
sure, we'll get to a certain dollar amount, but we'll get to that in a minute.
Right. All right. So this is where the biggest controversy comes in. To a lot of people, this is where it comes in. I have problems later on. So Carson's interception in the third quarter is a big spark of controversy. That one was initially, the interception was called back for pass interference. Off the top, I said this watching it, I didn't see pass interference. I really didn't. To me, it was played the same way KJ's was. And, if you're going to call KJ's, you need to call that one because exact same play. It's
And they did.
stupid to me to undo that.
Yeah.
Maybe.
But why did they undo it? What exactly happened?
Yeah, so this is where it gets real wild. They call it pass interference. Texas crowd goes nuts. They show it on the screen a couple of times because it takes, about 2 minutes for them to have a conversation and be like, hey, what'd you do that flag for?
Right.
Oh, it's pass interference on this guy. And the referee said it took so long initially because the guy said the wrong number. When has that stopped an announcement
Anyone.
that's
say
not a targeting announcement?
That happened earlier in the game with a holding call and nothing got stopped.
Yep.
Right.
And during their conversation, Texas fans see it on the replay board and start throwing water bottles and empty beer cans onto the field. And I do want to stop here. The Texas coaching staff, hats off, truly hats off to the way that you handled that situation, because Steve Sarkisian was immediately pissed off, took off all of his wires and ran over there and told him to quit. And from a coach's perspective, that's all you can do. You can't go into the stands and start yelling at people. But running over to the opposite sideline in the corner of the end zone and trying to get the kids to stop, which they listened, to be fair. He did everything he could do. This is absolutely not on the coaching staff.
Mm-hmm. Or the university, really. I mean, I lost a lot of respect for Texas's fans and students over this whole incident, but the Sark and the university handled it about as well as they could.
Yeah, 100%.
But honestly, when I saw the amount of people in the crowd that had spray tans the color of their shirt, I immediately lost respect for their fans right then.
Not to get us on a tangent, but can we talk about the crowd, because they didn't really seem to have an impact on the game, and we talked about this isn't necessarily one of the famous stadiums for doing that.
It seemed pretty pro Georgia. I mean, except for the throwing stuff out there. Like, I mean, you could hear all of our
a lot
chants,
of Georgia
everything,
fans that Carson didn't seem to have a whole lot of trouble getting plays called. We didn't get any pre-snap penalties really. Like the crowd just didn't really seem to have an impact on the game at all.
Yeah.
Until they threw trash on the field and caused a delay in the game.
Yeah, but Dawgs travel, I mean, you see all the videos after the game of it pretty much only being Georgia fans there, and it was 25% of the stadium was Georgia fans. Because Dawgs travel, and especially when it's going somewhere like this, I think Georgia's done this arguably the most over the last decade or so of traveling to different stadiums.
Yeah,
across
think about
the
South
country.
Bend and all the stadiums we've gone to for these big playoff and bowl games.
Yeah,
Dawgs are always there. Anytime we get a chance to go somewhere new.
But then, while there's a pause to get the trash cleaned up, which is what should have happened, right?
Yeah.
The referees take that opportunity to talk to both coaches, to be fair. Talk to both coaches for a moment, and then the trash is cleaned up and the referees are still having a conversation. It's kind of odd.
Yeah.
And we're thinking, I think everybody's thinking, is Texas about to get a 15-yard penalty for throwing trash on the field? Because after what happened with Tennessee and Ole Miss a few years ago,
they don't want that happening again.
The league kind of said that's supposed to be a 15-yard penalty on the home team. So, like, maybe that's what they're talking about.
Well, and they delayed the game, and you know what? There's a penalty called delay of game, right?
Yeah.
Right. If the defense can get delay of game for moving in an aggressive fashion,
surely they can get delay of game for actually delaying the game.
Right.
Correct. But the referees make the announcement of actually after some water bottles were aimed at us, it's not pass interference. Texas ball on the, I think it was 9-yard line, 11-yard line, something like that.
Yeah, it was like inside the 10, yeah.
And I got to say, I have never seen this. Like, outside of a targeting penalty, obviously, I've never seen somebody overturn a flag that they threw. That it's supposed to stand as called on the field.
Oh, I do, but I'll get to it in a second.
Okay, well, it's normally it doesn't happen, and obviously it doesn't happen if all that trash isn't thrown on the field. Which I mean, obviously the university was fined $250,000 for it. Which we could talk about if that's fair, or if that's enough, or if the university itself should have been punished for it. That's a whole different conversation.
So I do have a
But
question when it comes to the fine. Do they treat it like storming the field and that money goes to the opposing university, or does the SEC just pocket that?
that's a great question. I don't know the answer. I'll see if I can find it somewhere though.
Okay.
Because
All right, Mike, you were about to say something?
Yeah, so you're talking about like never seen like the flag picked up in that situation. I do. I remember when the team's right here on my chest. Detroit was playing at Dallas. Shit, it's probably about 10 years ago now. Playoff game, and clear pass interference on Dallas. Detroit's driving. They're trying to like milk the clock and all that. It would have been a first down. They call it, and like they move forward, and then they're like, you know what? Not pass interference. They pick up the flag. They march him backwards, and I think it was Joe Buck and Troy Aikman. Well, Troy Aikman didn't. He was happy about it, but he wouldn't say so. But they were like, I've never seen that before. So it happened in the state of Texas. Maybe it's a Texas thing.
Yeah, and so honestly, if they would have thrown the flag, had a conversation, and said there's no foul,
that's
that's
one thing.
different. That happens all the time. Multiple times a week, sometimes multiple times in a game. But as a non-reviewable penalty, which we talked to Matt Austin about this, should all penalties be reviewable? And he said no, that would delay games too much. It needs to stand as it is called. It was called. It was announced. The ball was moved. Trash was thrown. Then they said, LOL, JK, we're trying to make it to the hotel tonight. No foul. And that's the issue.
Yeah. And it really sets a press. That's kind of the thing we've been talking about. Like, if fans can just delay a game by being crazy and throwing stuff on the field long enough that referees are overturning penalties, like we're pretty much owed a national championship back in 2017. Because if we could have just done that, got that Tyler Simmons offsides call reversed, you're looking at a totally different game. Like
another non-reviewable penalty.
Yeah. Yep. And again, like this isn't sour grapes. We won the game. Like we're not sitting here coming and crying and making excuses. I'm almost glad that it went this way, just because now Texas fans don't have the excuse of, oh, the referees gave you that pass interference. Like it is what it is. Mm-hmm. But just the precedent that it sets, I'm glad something is being done to try to hamper this. If it was me and I'm that referee, like I know it's kind of unprecedented decision to make, but you turn on the microphone and you say, okay, the penalty wasn't valid, but now Georgia's keeping the ball in a 15-yard penalty because of that.
Unsportsmanlike conduct, delay of game, any of the 3 or 4 different penalties that you could have called on them at that point.
Anything that says, you know what, we might have picked that flag up if you hadn't done that, but now you have to face the consequences of your actions.
Right. They were essentially rewarded for what they did.
Mm-hmm. And then, the university pays a fine. Okay.
Right.
Yeah, the fans don't care.
One of the richest universities in college football has to pay $250,000. That's like an eighth of what they pay their one quarterback every year.
Mm-hmm. Now, I will say I can't find anything about where the money from the fine will go, but they are also conducting a review of Texas, making them change their security policies to help ensure it doesn't happen again. And if they don't comply with that review, then they can suspend alcohol sales and things like that. So,
yeah, which honestly, it may help to do that anyways, because the fans, as of this moment, have had zero repercussions for their actions. And if that would have happened at most other universities, it would not just be one fan base outrage. If let's just say Alabama fans did that, they're somehow still there in the fourth quarter, which isn't often. Let's say Alabama fans do that. You're hearing about it on Fox, ESPN, ABC, CBS. You're hearing it everywhere. Everybody's mad about it.
Yeah.
That happens at
if Georgia does it, they're talking about Georgia's thug culture reaching an all-time low. Kirby needs to be fired. Like,
right. But it happens at flashy Texas with 200 celebrities in the crowd, and all of a sudden it's like, oh, the fans were just drunk. It's like, the fans are trash for that, actually.
Yeah. Fans are as trashy as everything they were throwing on the field.
Yep.
But that at least is a case where the referee probably eventually made the right call in terms of the PI.
Yeah.
But the next thing we're going to talk about, I believe, is not one of those cases where the referees get it right.
Yeah, and we've actually, spoken internally about potentially reaching back out to Matt Austin to see, if we understand this wrong or if he disagrees with the call. Because not to harp on any one individual, but the rules analyst they had last night only agreed with calls that went against Georgia.
Period.
Yep. And a lot of them were fair, right? Like Georgia made a stop on fourth down. That was a face mask. Absolutely, it was a face mask, right? Yeah. But this call in particular actually pissed me off in the middle of the game because I feel like after that conversation with Matt Austin that I've gone back and listened to multiple times, the Dan Jackson targeting call wasn't targeting.
Yeah.
And from what I understand from that conversation we had with Matt Austin, and guys, if you want to go back and listen to it, it's still on Spotify, YouTube, it's everywhere. The player was not defenseless, right? There's no contact with the crown of the helmet. It was the side of the helmet.
Yeah.
The ball carrier also lowered his head and initiated the contact, which we had a separate conversation with Matt Austin about that. Of like, I hate the situation where the runner lowers his head and the defensive player is already in his posture, and now it's targeting on the defense because of what the offensive player did, which is what happened on this play.
Exactly what happened.
Yeah. And Matt
Austin was supposed to not be targeting.
Yep. Because in that situation, once the runner had his head where it was at, Dan Jackson lowered himself to make that tackle, in which his shoulder was going to make contact first. If the guy didn't lower his head at the last second, the guy lowers his head, side of the helmet makes contact, and then crown of the helmet makes contact with the shoulder pad. Next thing you know, Dan Jackson's out of the second half of this game, the first half against Florida, with a very, very, very questionable call that, by the way, that ESPN's best rules analyst described to us is not targeting. It was in this game.
Yeah, and that's a lot of people are really confused about what targeting is, and this doesn't help matters. My father-in-law was watching the game with me, and he's a casual fan. He watches football, but he doesn't break it down like we do. And he was under the impression that any helmet-to-helmet contact is targeting, period. And I think a lot of people just kind of look at any helmet-to-helmet. It's the same reason people still cry about Marvin Harrison Jr. and Javon Bullard. Yeah. Because most people, which that isn't even helmet-to-helmet, but it just looked like it. And so I think you get a lot of that confusion, and I hope that's not what the officials in the booth were thinking about when they reviewed this, but I don't know what they were seeing, to be honest with you.
I'm curious though. So after the last thing we talked about with the reverse PI, were the officials like legitimately scared like for their safety and all that after? Right. There was a bunch of calls after that.
Yeah,
seemingly went like objectively went. It looked like Georgia may converted third downs or fourth downs or whatever, or at the goal line later on. Where they had to go for it on fourth down, that I thought they pretty clearly got it on third. That I mean, there's if there are any debatable calls that went against,
Georgia got that fucking touchdown.
Yeah.
If Kirk Herbstreit is on Georgia's side, it's legit.
Yeah. It's got to be. I will say
anything questionable. It went against Georgia. Very odd. Just saying.
I will say that the defense in the third quarter had started to have a little bit of a rough go. Like they were still playing great, don't get me wrong. But they weren't quite as smooth. This really lit a fire under them and really kept it going, kept that passion going for the rest of the second half. So I hate that it means, and this is one thing I hate about targeting in general. I hate that it means you're missing a flair for the first half of the next game.
I will say it's either new this year or last year. Two things were changed, or I guess amended to the targeting rule because it didn't really effectively change it. One, the players are still able to be on the sideline, which for a guy like Dan Jackson, fifth-year senior, you want his kind of leadership when you're tossing a young guy out there to play his spot. Love that rule. Second is the athletic director can send an appeal to the conference and say, hey, based on these factors, I do not believe this was targeting. We need an in-depth conference review. And with this Georgia's bye week next week,
You got 2 weeks to do it.
Yeah, there's a potential that Dan Jackson is not out of that first half of the Florida game.
Do it, Josh.
I think they already have. Like I think that paperwork is ready to go by the end of the game. But does the conference uphold that to have their referees backs, kind of like the NFL did when pass interference was reviewable for a year? Probably.
Yeah.
The next targeting call. Janelle Aguero gets called for targeting, and I called it immediately. That was actually targeting. That was pretty clear, the definition of the rule. Janelle lowered his helmet, crown of the helmet, which is 6-inch circle from the very top, made contact with the face mask. It was targeting. I don't have a problem with that.
Yeah. But in the moment, I was hot about it just because of everything else that had happened.
Yeah.
But upon further review, yeah, that's fair.
Yeah, it was like, of course it is. Yeah,
that was everybody's immediate reaction based on the way the second half had gone. But guys, if you go back and look at it, it's targeting. We try to be intellectually honest here, and that was targeting. It was. The good news.
So
No, go ahead.
I was just going to segue into it. 2 safeties are gone. What does Georgia's defense do next?
Good news is safety is really the only position on the field for the defense that I have a lot of confidence in the depth. I think it's 100% the deepest position in the defense. Ja'Cory Thomas played well, made a stop in the end zone on Texas's final drive. It was their 4th down that was headed to the end zone. He broke that pass up. Mm-hmm. And then I don't have a single issue with KJ Bolden getting more snaps there. You've also got Jake Pope, the Alabama transfer that plays star and safety, kind of like Malachi does. So if you want to put Malachi back into the backfield, you put Jake Pope up front, at least for that first half. And like I said, I'm not real worried about it. I know Florida has gotten better as a team over the last few weeks, and it seems like they're really playing hard for DJ Lagway, and he does a lot of things that Graham Mertz was just not physically capable of doing. But if it had happened to corners or inside linebackers with Smile Mondon being out, I would be concerned. But safety is one position where I'm like, okay, it sucks, but it could be a lot worse.
Honestly, the way this defense played, they could go out in there and play Patrick Mahomes, and I feel pretty good about it.
At the safety position against Patrick Mahomes.
Yeah.
Do y'all want to talk about that goal line drive where Georgia had to go for it on 4th down? Because I feel like the 2nd down run and 3rd down run were the 2nd down was arguably in, and the 3rd down was pretty obviously in.
Yeah, I agree. I don't hate it. Just because we got in anyway, and the clock ran down quite a bit there, so I'm not too mad at it. If we hadn't got in, I would have a very different opinion on it. But
you knocked another minute off the clock. I mean,
Now again, it is just another symptom of Texas or the referees being completely scared that Texas fans will throw things at them again. Yeah, but the result was fine, so I'm not too hot about it. Just add it to the list, though.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I really truly feel like this officiating crew should be investigated. And what makes me question, I don't want to say the integrity of the officiating crew, but maybe their motives, or is it possible that the SEC tried to make a phone call like the ACC did for Miami's games?
Mm-hmm. Right.
Keep a team undefeated, because this is an SEC officiating crew that's been together for years, and from what I can remember, they are normally one of the better officiating crews.
Yeah, they don't make a whole lot of mistakes.
Yeah.
And that's why they did this game too, right?
Yeah. They get picked for the games based on their performances. And it didn't really seem like this was a great performance.
Yeah. Which, I mean, everybody has an off night, but this, when 90% of it goes in one direction.
Yeah.
Rest in peace, Liam.
I was gonna make a joke, but I wasn't. But I decided against it.
So Fun fact, Texas was actually penalized more often, but for almost half of the yards.
Yeah, most of their stuff was pre-snap, 5-yard penalty, whatever.
And goal line situations where it was half the distance to the goal kind of stuff. But, all right, now we got to get to a couple of negative things about Georgia. And it's mainly one. Carson Beck, overall, trying to be objective, played a bad game. Based on his standards of what he did last year, based on, what the quarterback position for Georgia has done pretty much every year since Kirby took over. He was 56.1% completion on the night for 175 yards and 3 interceptions. Right?
It's not good.
No. 2 of those interceptions were, what the fuck are you doing? One of those, I get it. Like, okay. I'm not mad at one of them, but when it did count, when it mattered, Georgia was backed up 3rd and 10, right at their own goal line. He made the plays that were needed. 21-yard pass to Arian Smith, then the double reverse flea flicker to Oscar for 43 yards. Side note, Oscar finally looks healthy, healthiest he has all year. And then that Stetson-esque scramble when no one was open, and he moved right and then back left, and then said, oh, here's a gap. I'm going to get 6 yards when I need 5.
Yeah. He's reminding me right now of like early 2021 Stetson Bennett, which he shouldn't be because he came in with more talent and he's been here longer than Stetson had at that point. Mm-hmm. But I also don't hate if that is who he is because it means he's got more coming. But again, but also to me, though, he's got lower floors and higher ceilings than that version of Stetson Bennett did, which has caused problems and could cause problems. But like early Stetson Bennett, you had the defense to sort of give you the breathing room on it.
Yeah, especially in this game last night. Like if he would have had that type of performance against Clemson, real bad day.
Yeah.
Even Mississippi State last week. If he would have done something like that against Mississippi State last week, probably a really bad day. But, water finds its level. The defense stepped up when the offense couldn't necessarily do it as well. And it wasn't the entire offense. Carson's decision-making, kind of seems to be a whack-a-mole on the offense. The receivers can't catch one week, and then Carson makes bad decisions the next week, and at some point, put some damn dynamite in the hole and quit whacking the moles. Just not trying to kill anybody here, but like figure the shit out,
Yeah.
Back to the positive, because the offensive line played their asses off all night. I really thought the issues lately were more of Tate being out than they were of Jared Wilson being out. But with Jared Wilson back, the offensive line looked 10 times better than it has over the last 3 weeks.
Yeah. And Bobo's been fine at the center position, but together as a unit, they just seem to really get it together.
And I will say, I have watched this game, obviously last night, watched most of it today, and I kept seeing Monroe Freeling on the field. I never once saw him lined up on the offensive line. And I am so confused. Like, Etienne's touchdown on 4th and 1, and you see Monroe Freeling pick him up, and I'm like, I just saw the overhead view, and 57 was not there. Like,
That's classic Kirby Smart. We're just going to get the 11 best guys for this and put them wherever we can. That is classic Kirby.
Yeah, like Dylan Fairchild played left guard all night. They had Micah Morris playing right guard all night. They had Xavier Truss playing right tackle. And for all the shit I've talked about Xavier Truss, he had a phenomenal game yesterday.
He did.
Yeah.
And then you just see Monroe Freeling picking a dude up after a touchdown, and I'm like, oh, did I forget how to read the number 7? Did I get that dumb? But yeah, no, phenomenal play by the offensive line all night. Once again, not as severe as the Dalen Everett situation, but Xavier Truss, for all the shit I have given him when he's in that right tackle spot, played his ass off all night. Most of the big runs actually went on that right side of the line. 4th and 1 touchdown, the Etienne's first touchdown of the night, both on the right side of the line could not be happier with the way the line played.
Mm-hmm. Have to agree with you there. They have really, really stepped it up. People were really getting on them, especially about opening up those run lanes. They were wide open. Even ETN was hitting the holes because they were so wide open.
Yeah. And I made a joke about that last night in our group that my wife asked me to not say on the podcast, so I will not.
If I could remember it, I would instead. But I just remembered laughing for 20 minutes at it.
All right, one last issue, and then if we're getting into the players of the game. The second half game plan of switching Jalen Walker's assignment, because in the first half he was single-minded, hit Quinn Ewers, hit Arch Manning, hit the running back in the backfield, hit somebody behind the line of scrimmage, right?
Mm-hmm.
Did it extremely well, did it phenomenally. That's the best I have seen a singular Georgia front seven performance when it comes to tackles for loss, hitting people in the backfield by an individual in an extremely long time.
Yeah.
Yeah. Have to agree.
Second half comes around and they're like, hey, Jalen, I know Quinn Ewers has like the number 11 imprinted on him right now. But we actually need you to start covering running backs out of the backfield and slot.
Yeah, this didn't make any sense to me either. Like he did admirably, I guess, but why fix what ain't broke?
Right.
Yeah. And, at times, third downs, fourth downs, they were like, hey, Jalen, remember the first half? Do it again. And it worked again. Yeah. And it's like, why did we stop that for 50% of the fourth quarter?
Also, I forgot to mention this, so I'm going to talk about it now. Chris Fowler kept calling Dylan Bell a tight end last night.
I think
it's an 86, right? It's very confusing.
Yeah, I think it's because he actually wears 86.
Yeah, he's done it before too. I noticed it and wanted to say it. These are the people. This is the best commentary team ESPN's got.
Dylan can play whatever position you want him to play.
That's true.
As long as Joe Tess has a contract with ESPN and ABC, I will not call Kirk Herbstreit the best commentary crew.
Facts.
Where was that? Yeah, I think that's it for me until we get to players of the game.
Yeah. I will say, if you had told me what Carson's stat line was before the game, like if you just said, hey, Carson's not going to throw for a touchdown, he's going to throw 3 picks and only 175 yards, I'm like, oh, we are getting blown out in this game for sure.
Mm-hmm.
But the rest of the team ended up stepping up and playing its best. You got to give them a lot of credit for that. Everything that I was worried about being a liability in this game actually really ended up being a big asset, from the secondary to the running game to the ability of the line to get pressure on the quarterback and stop the run game. Even on the outside run play was phenomenal from this defense. We just did everything that we needed to do to win the game when what's supposed to be our best weapon wasn't a factor. So just a huge amount of credit to everybody on this team for really coming together and putting together the best game they could in the circumstances.
And we really are like similar to what Alabama was under Saban in this sense that, if in the rare instance that you are an underdog, you take that personally.
Yeah.
And make everybody feel really stupid for picking against you.
Kirby's speech, your whole network doubted us. Like they knew. There are pictures of his son walking around the locker room with the screenshots from game day, and I saw those. I saw those pictures start to go around like the middle of the first quarter, and I was like, we're about to win this game by a lot. And I mean, double digits against the number 1 team in the country is
the school really does need to put a bunch of these like Kirby like post game stuff and just like sound bites that he's had, just like Florida did with Tebow, like just on the outside of the stadium, just put them just kind of around Sanford Stadium and just get you freaking hyped.
That reporter, and I can't remember her name, so you have to forgive me, but she asking him, how do you get the best out of your players, and him saying these players get the best out of me. Oh, that just made me feel so many things.
And then immediately after that, he said, we came here to eat. Our intent was to eat. We're hungry. Thanksgiving Day.
Yeah, save that. Save that.
That's getting clipped.
Mm-hmm.
Oh. All right. Players of the game. Who wants offense?
I can take. Okay. Mike said he's going to do it. Go ahead.
Okay. All right. All right. So Trevor Etienne, he was the most reliable offensive player on Saturday and changed course from the issues that he had the last couple games. He started the game still trying to make guys miss in the gap and changes play in the middle of the game to actually hitting gaps, like you mentioned, uh, and making people pay for it. 19 carries for 87 yards, 3 catches for 23 yards, and all 3 of Georgia's touchdowns.
Yeah.
Pretty good day.
Play.
Without
Yeah.
ETN, where this team loses that game.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Kaleb, you got defense?
Yeah, sure. So for defensive player of the game, we're cheating a little bit here and giving it to the entirety of the front seven. All of those guys. They didn't allow Texas to breathe all night. 7 sacks. 6 of the 7 sacks were by front seven guys. The only one that wasn't is by a guy we'll talk about in just a minute. 7.5 tackles for loss. 2 passes defended, deflecting balls. 2 recovered fumbles. And then we do want to highlight one guy who's really flown under the radar this season, and that is Chris Cole, who played quite a bit in this game.
Yeah.
True freshman inside linebacker, just short of winning freshman of the game, just because of another guy who played out of his mind. But in the last 2 games, he's been out there with Raylan Wilson and C.J. Allen, while Smile Monin has been out playing over Troy Bowles, by the way, who is older. He had 2 tackles and he had a pass defended in this game. Just playing fantastic. He's got great instincts as well. Jalen Walker, we really thought about just giving it to Jalen Walker. Everybody else stepped up so much that we felt like we needed to recognize everybody. But, Jalen Walker was the one who led this team in total tackles. They were all solo tackles, 3 sacks, 3 tackles for loss, fumble recovery. He was everywhere last night. He was a man possessed. And again, his number 11 is imprinted somewhere on Quinn Ewers' soul.
Yeah. And this is something we meant to put in here. The front seven only allowed 29 yards rushing. Obviously, sack yards are taken out of that. But 29 yards against a team that was 40th in the country in rushing offense going into this game.
And it's not like they were just trying to do it all down the middle. They were trying. Everyone talks about outside run is Georgia defense's weakness. That's just Kirby Smart. He doesn't know how to do it. They were doing a lot of outside runs and quick screens and things like that. Just couldn't get anything. This front seven was chasing them down all over the field.
Mm-hmm.
And for this week's, hold on, I forgot which key I have set up for the audio. I should have been looking at that. All right, here we go. All right, and for this week's,
Walker went 16 yards. He drove right over Orange Church, just driving and running with those big cars. My God, a freshman.
Player of the game, we got KJ Bolden.
Again.
This has ended up a lot like Malachi Stark's freshman season, and it's almost the KJ Bolden Freshman of the Week award. But he had 3 tackles. All 3 of those were solo tackles against one of the most explosive offenses in the country. And he had to play a lot in the second half because of the targeting ejections. And I don't remember a single play where he should have been somewhere he wasn't, or he should have been doing something that he wasn't doing. He did everything within the defense and dotted I's, crossed T's all night. And that's not something you normally expect from a true freshman playing against that offense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we talked about the PI that wasn't, but the reason he got called for it is because he was doing what he was supposed to do, what you want to see these safeties do. He was playing real physical, and he was doing that all night. That was the whole defense was, but in KJ Bolden's case, that was a Georgia safety, just getting after it, getting physical, working for it.
Yeah, you had a true freshman KJ Bolden covering Isaiah Bond in the end zone.
Yeah.
Shouldn't have been pass interference, but even if it was, who cares? He didn't let that touchdown score.
Isaiah Bond must have gotten behind the defense and really burned us for something deep, right? At some point in that game.
No. That was
he got
the game
like 2
plan
yards
from the SEC championship last season, where they said, "Hey, Jalen Walker, we want you to spy Jalen Milroe and cover Isaiah Bond. That'll work."
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, even when it did, it's going to get overturned in the booth and made a 4th down conversion. But, well, let's talk about this year.
All right. Lumberjack Award, and I'm doing this one because, just a history with this particular player. And it's Dalen fucking Everett in a positive way, once again. This man called me and all the doubters out with the way he played in this game. He had a Javon Bullard type performance with his sack, his fumble recovery, his interception. He had an absolutely beautiful performance. 7 tackles, all solo, 1 sack, 1 tackle for loss, 2 passes defended. I mean, everything that we could have ever hoped for out of Dalen Everett, and for it to be a performance like that in a game like this, hats off once again.
Yeah. I got to say, there is a new account out on Instagram now called Dalen Everett Worshipper. They made it before this game. And I remember thinking, like, I'll give it a follow because that's funny.
Yep,
but, like, the second that he screws something up in this game and gives up something deep, you're going to regret making that account. And he never did. He earned it. So good on him.
Joke's on us. It was actually Dalen Everett.
I was about to say, sounds like a burner.
It's his Finsta. And, you know, he made it because he knew he was about to do what he did.
Yeah, and he just snagged it before the next person was inevitably going to make it. I did want to give an honorable mention on Lumberjack to the entire secondary, which I know Dalen is a part of. But we were all talking after that game against Mississippi State about how much the secondary needed to step up and try harder. And every single one of them fought like hell, even after losing 2 guys to those targeting calls. Really, the whole 2 deep in the secondary worked and worked and worked. And you saw the results. I mean, this electric passing attack couldn't get much done at all.
Yeah, no, I went on the radio on Friday and talked about how Texas is going to win this game by 10 points because our secondary sucks. First time I've been wrong on the radio this year.
Well, hey, that's a good time to be wrong.
Yeah, right. I don't know if it made, because we have 10, 15-minute conversations. Only a couple of it goes on the radio. But I was like, I hope I'm wrong. I really do. But with what this team has shown us, I just don't have the confidence they're going to go in there and shut down this offense.
Lo and behold.
Yeah, fun fact. Kirby Smart's staff listens to Rock 106.1 in Savannah.
As they should.
I mean, as they should.
I'm sure that clip of you was playing on repeat in the locker room on Saturday, too.
If so, guys, I'm sorry, but deep down, you know that I was correct.
Yeah. Well, you shouldn't be sorry. You motivated them.
Perfect. All right, so we got a few random game notes here. I know we've been going for a minute, but so much happened this weekend. We got to hit on some things. First note I have, Jalen Milbrough isn't a good quarterback in tight games unless the other team has a G on their helmet. He's really just not. So if they play Grambling, they better watch out. But man, interception to steal the win for Tennessee, a bad decision on 4th down. Alabama's not a good team unless they're playing Georgia, and haven't been for most of the last 2 years.
Yeah.
But that interception did award Tennessee the win, and one of the most awkward field stormings we've ever seen.
Yeah.
I have in here, it was trickle-down hillbilnomics, because it started with like 5 dudes, and then other people were like, oh, we're storming the field.
I guess this Alabama team's good enough for us to do this after Vanderbilt beat them. Sure.
Yeah, and then I will say it was funny. There was a kid lighting a cigar in the stands, and
it was like 12.
Caught it. Yeah.
Yeah, I will say last year Jalen had great moments in 3 games, and actually I don't even remember why I put 3 games because I can only think of 2 of them right now. But he's on track to do about the same thing this year. And Alabama having 2 losses before the end of October is wild, and I wonder how much buyer's remorse there is right now for Kalen DeBoer.
Right, and like kind of going off what you said, there's the first time, I think this is on like SEC final, but first time since 2007 that Bama's had multiple losses going into November.
The Louisiana Monroe year.
07 feels like 07.
Another 07.
It really does, but I mean, and I can't remember who said it. It was somebody in the group chat. I don't know if it was Kaleb or someone else about how we do like adding the L's to Florida with every loss. It's about time to do that with Alabama.
Mm-hmm. It is, having 2, but with their schedule, Alabama. how many could they have?
They still got LSU coming on down.
Mm-hmm. Oklahoma.
Oklahoma's
Auburn.
coming.
I mean,
Yeah.
they suck, but so does Alabama, evidently.
Where
Yeah,
is the
so-
game? Is this a game on the plains between Alabama and Auburn this year, or is it a no? What? Because last year Jalen
Yeah,
had that 4th and 31
yeah, in
on the
Auburn.
plains, so it's at
Yeah.
Alabama, so that'll help
Yeah.
them.
So they
But
play.
still,
Alabama plays Mizzou this week.
that's a losable game.
Yep.
LSU November 9th.
That's losable.
Very losable, yeah.
Mercer November 16th.
They got that one.
Oklahoma November 23rd. And this is Oklahoma by the time that they should have most of their wide receivers and running backs back healthy.
Where
Or they
is that
just-
one?
Norman.
I think it's, yeah, and they just fired their offensive coordinator like
They
a
did.
couple hours ago. So
And then they have
Oh.
Auburn at home. But Alabama has 2 ranked games for the rest of the season.
Yeah, well, I mean, again, we counted 3 and plus a rivalry game where anything could happen that they could. 6-6 is technically on the table.
could you imagine? I'm here for it.
I
Yeah,
would
me
love
too.
to imagine, actually.
Yeah. I'm gonna try to dream about it tonight. But yeah, I don't know if you guys saw this afterward. You talking about the field storming? They tried to take out the field, the goalpost again, but they didn't get it out of the stadium. So there's a video of the security bringing it back down,
Yes.
and like the one security guard trying to jump up and grab it, and he's just too tiny and he can't do it. It was
Yeah.
that was very funny. I mean, Vandy took that some bitch 3 miles, and UT got it like 300 feet. So another
The most awkward field storm of all time.
It's like,
People
oh,
are
here-
asking.
Yes. I mean, let's be clear. Which team are you more afraid to play right this minute? Tennessee or Vanderbilt?
Vanderbilt,
Vanderbilt.
100% Vanderbilt.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Vandy's like tied for
Georgia-
like second in the SEC right now, right?
Yeah.
At least
Yeah.
lost wise.
And
Oh,
Georgia
yeah.
just beat better Tennessee by double digits in their own house after giving up 3 turnovers. So
Yeah.
Yeah. No, the SEC standings are wild, and this is not in the outline, but I had to look it up today because
Texas A&M
Oh.
still on top, right?
Yep, they are.
A&M and LSU are tied for first.
Yeah, undefeated. Both of
A&M
them
and
in league.
LSU are tied for first. Then you have Georgia, Tennessee, Missouri, Vandy, Texas tied for second.
Yeah.
And then
Georgia
you
has
have,
head-to-head over a couple of those.
Yep.
and then they have Bama, Arkansas, and Florida tied for third.
Oh my gosh. Imagine telling a Bama fan at the beginning of this season, hey, by the time we get to the end of October, you're tied with Florida in the SEC standings.
And Vanderbilt's above
add
you.
Ole Miss into that tie for third.
Oh, yeah.
All 2-loss conference teams.
Yeah.
And then South Carolina, Oklahoma tied next, and then Kentucky, Auburn, and Mississippi State are all tied with 4 conference losses.
I love this football season so much,
Yeah.
you guys. I really do.
I do gotta say one other thing before we move on. If you look at Tennessee's schedule, because we looked at the other ones there, it's hard to say if they're actually good or not, because I mean they're really not. I mean, their best win before Bama was NC State, who is now currently 4-4 in 13th in the ACC, much vaunted ACC. So yeah,
I will say, good news for Kentucky is that outside of Georgia and Vanderbilt, shockingly, their schedule does not look too difficult. They play Kentucky at home November 2nd.
Kentucky plays Kentucky at home?
Tennessee plays Kentucky at home. I messed
Oh,
it up.
okay.
Yeah, Tennessee plays Kentucky at home, Mississippi State at home, which could be sneaky if Van Buren's still improving. Then they have at Georgia, UTEP at home at Vandy.
Vandy's not a given.
Yeah.
As we know.
This could go any way.
Yeah. Gonna hit on the Florida game real quick. After their performance against Kentucky, I think we're all slightly more concerned about that game. It'll be interesting with Lagway lighting a fire under the offense after beating Kentucky 42-20. It's not
a given anymore.
No.
It's not a 50-50, but it's not a given.
Also, Mike, I did not mean to steal your thunder with the SEC standings. Did not.
No, it's all good. No, it's all good. I mean, the only other thing that was, I think, left in there was, I mean, Texas and Texas A&M. That the winner of that game could theoretically be playing the winner of Georgia and Tennessee in Atlanta for the SEC championship.
If that's the case, we're not talking about Alabama or LSU in this SEC championship game, which is wild.
Yeah,
Thank
it'll
God.
be the first time one of those two teams haven't played out of the West in how long?
2017, I think, is the last time when
with
Auburn got in.
Yeah.
You know how that went.
Yeah.
We do. I think it would be hilarious if Texas A&M is in the SEC championship and we have Georgia and A&M play for the second time since 2012, neither in College Station.
Just keep it going. Never play in College Station.
I will never not be angry about the fact that we played an SEC game in Austin before we played one in College Station.
Bro,
Yeah, it's not
I
lost
really
on
think Greg Sankey is just trolling A&M fans.
Yeah, absolutely. No, you don't get Georgia. Sorry about it.
All right, guys, that's going to do it for this episode of the Nothing Finer podcast. Huge win. That's why we spent most of the day on it. If you haven't already, follow us on social media at nothing.finer.pod on Instagram, at finerpod on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, TikTok. Just look us up. Rate and review the show 5 stars. Share it with your friends. And, as always, remember there's nothing finer in the land.
Then I'm drunk, I'm nauseous. Horns down.
Horns down.